In the Serengeti Game Reserve in Tanzania, a vast and wild wilderness, there lived an old man named Makonde. Mr. Makonde was a former ranger who had devoted more than 50 years of his life to protecting the animals in the reserve, from his youth to his old age. Over the decades, he worked tirelessly to keep illegal poachers at bay. The people of the Serengeti held him in deep respect, seeing him as a living legend for his dedication, kindness, and wisdom. Even after retirement, he continued to volunteer, driving his old, weathered car through the reserve every day to patrol the land. Young rangers often came to him for advice, drawn by his profound knowledge of the animals and the land. The elephants, giraffes, zebras, rhinos, and all the other creatures of the Serengeti were under his watchful care. He had a particular soft spot for the old animals in the safe area, a peaceful sanctuary where the elderly creatures could rest and recover. Despite his health declining with age, Mr. Makonde never let it stop him from his work. Recently, the Serengeti had been experiencing more extreme weather, with temperatures expected to reach 45. Early one morning, as the sun blazed fiercely above, the air was heavy and hot, forcing many of the animals to seek shelter under the shade of the large acacia trees. But Mr. Makonde was determined to check on a rhino that had been injured the day before. He drove his old car toward the bushy area where the rhino was resting. The road was bumpy, and the heat inside the car was suffocating, but Mr. Makonde pushed on. His face grew red with sweat as he drove through the dry grasslands. When he finally reached the spot, he parked the car and stepped out to check on the rhino. The large animal still looked weak, a long wound on its side that hadn't fully healed. Mr. Makonde approached it slowly, his heart full of concern and tenderness. As he got closer, a sharp pain suddenly gripped his chest. The pain spread quickly, overwhelming him. His vision blurred and his legs gave way. He collapsed into the dry grass, his face pale and drenched in sweat. Two of his colleagues, Elijah and Musa, were nearby, tending to the zebras. They heard a faint call and rushed over. They found Mr. Makonde on the ground, struggling to breathe. Elijah checked his pulse. It was faint and erratic. Musa searched frantically through the old man's pockets for his heart medication, but it was missing. Perhaps in his rush to check on the rhino, Mr. Makonde had forgotten it. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Elijah immediately radioed the center for help. The medical team mobilized quickly, and a special vehicle arrived to take Mr. Makonde to the medical room. On the way, Elijah kept calling his name, hoping for a miracle. But Mr. Makonde's breaths grew shallow, his eyes fluttering closed. At the medical room, doctors worked tirelessly to revive him, using artificial respiration and a defibrillator. But after 15 agonizing minutes, a doctor finally confirmed what they all feared. His heart had stopped beating. The room fell silent. The news hit hard. The reserve had lost a pillar, a guardian of the land. When his family was informed, they were overcome with grief. As per Mr. Makonde's wishes, his funeral would be held at the reserve. The staff began preparations, adhering to the indigenous rituals that Mr. Makonde had always respected. The next morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, everyone gathered in the central courtyard of the sanctuary. A simple wooden bed was placed in the center, with Mr. Makonde's body resting peacefully upon it. His face was serene, as though he were merely sleeping. One by one, people came to say their goodbyes, their eyes filled with sadness and admiration. Elijah stood by the bed, his hand trembling, as he gently touched the old man's hand, remembering. the many times they had worked together. Musa stood silently beside him, lighting an incense stick in quiet prayer. Then, out of nowhere, a loud bark echoed from the gates of the sanctuary. Everyone turned in shock, and their eyes widened as a large golden dog padded through the crowd. The dog was enormous, with a golden coat that shimmered in the sunlight. It moved with quiet dignity, its eyes watching the people with an odd mixture of familiarity and reverence. The dog had no aggression in its manner, but its presence was commanding. It walked slowly toward the wooden bed where Mr. Makonde lay, circling it twice before stopping at the foot of the bed. The dog bowed its head as though in remembrance. The scene was surreal, and a sense of awe washed over the crowd. The golden dog had a deep scar on its side, one that Elijah recognized immediately. It was the same dog he and Mr. Makonde had rescued 15 years ago. Back then, the dog had been a stray, injured, and malnourished, wandering near the outskirts of the reserve. Mr. Makonde had tended to its wounds, nursing it back to health. From that day forward, the dog had remained near the reserve, becoming a constant presence. Now, it seemed, the dog had come to say goodbye. The story of the dog's loyalty moved everyone deeply. Elijah cautiously approached it, hoping to calm the animal. Surprisingly, the dog didn't show any signs of aggression, but instead, it lowered its head further, almost as if acknowledging Elijah's recognition. As the others slowly joined in, they found the courage to step closer, and together they shared a sacred moment of mourning for the old man. After the ceremony, everyone carried Mr. Makonde's body to a peaceful field, where he had often gone, to relax in the shade of a large tree. The golden dog followed silently behind, occasionally letting out a mournful bark, its eyes never leaving the body. The group paused by the tree where they began to dig a grave. The golden dog stood nearby, watching the proceedings with quiet sorrow. When the grave was ready, they laid Mr. Makonde to rest, and the golden dog bowed its head, staying by the grave for what felt like an eternity. Elijah and Musa placed a stone at the head of the grave, inscribed with Mr. Makonde's name, to honor his 50 years of service. The local people gathered around, offering prayers for his soul to find peace. Then, the golden dog stood up and let out a long, mournful howl. The sound was heartbreaking, a cry of pain for a lost friend, a benefactor, who had given it a second chance at life. When the group finally left, the golden dog remained behind, its eyes locked on the grave. The sun set slowly, painting the sky in hues of red and orange, as the dog stood vigil over the final resting place of the man who had saved its life. The next day, the reserve paused all its activities in remembrance of Mr. Makonde. People came to the grave to leave flowers, light incense, and pray. The golden dog was often seen returning to the grave, quietly sitting beside it as if keeping watch. For the dog, Mr. Makonde had been the one who had given it a second chance at life, and now it was repaying that kindness by honoring him. Elijah and Musa, too, often visited the grave, talking to Mr. Makonde in spirit, continuing the work of preserving the wild creatures of the Serengeti. The legacy of Mr. Makonde, the legendary ranger, would live on in the heart of the Serengeti, forever remembered not only by the animals he saved, but also by the big golden dog who had never forgotten the man who had saved it.